Okay, I'm Joe Menendez, and I'm going to talk about the technological innovations in the classroom, or how technology affected education. In order to do that, I want to give you a little bit of background of the history of education, and I'll kind of breeze through that. In the beginning, education was a secondary necessity. We talked about that in one of our articles earlier in the year, in the semester. The economy was more agrarian, so the students worked first, then attended schools as a second necessity. Okay. In fact, most only attended elementary school, as it was. Most of them didn't go to high school. As the economy moved to a more urban, industrial society, brought on more toward the late 1800s when the German Industrial Revolution, and then the rest of the world kind of followed. The older jobs were creatively destroyed, and the need for education became much more important. More students began not only to go to school, but continue to high school and even to college. Just to kind of give you some numbers, in 1900, which would have been right about here, there were still over 200,000 one-room schools, okay, in our system. 50% of people between the ages 5 to 19 were enrolled in school, but only 50% of those kids went on to further than high. Well, let me rephrase that. 50% of kids were in elementary school alone, and only a third of them went to high school, and then only a third of those graduated. So the people that graduated from high school were really going to be the professionals. Okay. But by the 1930s, we were shifting more to the urban society. 75% of all people went all the way through to high school, and of that, 50% graduated. Okay. The only real exception to that was people that didn't go, the Amish people, and they actually had to file suit so that they didn't have to go, so they weren't found for truancy. Big case there was Marbury versus Madison, and they kind of proved that, you know, they could take their kids out after 8th grade because they kind of showed that they, in their religious order, they had to provide for an apprenticeship and work their skilled crafts that way, so it's kind of an equivalent. So they said, look, we need our people back. You know, they can't be wasting their time in school. So so they did. As the needs changed, because the economy was transitioning, more people were staying in school. Schools had to transition from teaching just the basics, which was just math, reading, writing, all those things, to preparing students to actually function. Okay. Also, just as the economy changes, the students were changing as well. So by the late 20th century, students were born to a digital age. And I got this out of the book, but they called these kids were digital natives. This generation, and I got this straight out of the book, this generation is unique in that it's the first to grow up with digital and cyber technology. Not only are net geners acculturated to the use of technology, they're actually saturated in it. By the time he or she has reached 21 years of age, the average net gener will have spent 10,000 hours playing video games. Okay? Time enough for 200,000 emails, 20,000 hours watching television, and if you think, the standard work year is only 2,000 hours. So that's basically saying 5 full-time years playing video games. 10,000 hours on cell phones, not just texting. And, this is the shocking one, under 5,000 hours of actually reading. So we've kind of made a shift here. This is from a guy named Bonamici from 2005. More notes. It is no coincidence that the students are so saturated in technology, basically because the whole economy is. So the school systems had to change to incorporate this technology into our curriculum. Okay? Originally, the new shift was intended solely to better prepare students for the real demands of the workforce. And that was really started in 1996 when President Bill Clinton announced transformative vision for computing. And he called for, and he started putting up this curriculum standard that modern computers and learning devices available to all students. Okay? Classrooms connected to one another and the outside world, make educational software an integral part of the curriculum and as engaging as the best video game. Think of video games in '96. Think of this at the beginning of the internet in '96. Okay? Have teachers ready to use and teach with technology, and you'll see through this that's really the biggest obstacle. Getting the teachers willing to be flexible enough to work with it. Okay? This is in the Christensen book that I read, Christensen 2008. So far, some of the technical innovations, let me just catch up with my notes here. Technical innovations, for example, when was the last time you guys saw somebody actually working with this thing? I mean, look at it. It's all dusty. Dr. Sindav actually uses this to hold down his projector screen. So, I mean, you know, for us, some of us, it might not have been too long ago, but for some of these new people, I bet you don't even know what that is. So, some of the innovations: computers and the internet, blogs, videos, wikis, Facebook, and I'll talk a little bit more about how some of the teachers are using those pretty innovatively in the classroom and why. Cameras in the classroom, be good and bad. RFIDs. I just want to spend a little bit on RFIDs. The RFID tags have been experimented with in this country. They've been used fairly extensively in London for a series of years, where most of the students have to wear uniforms anyway. So what they're doing is, with the name tags, they're putting these RFID tags in them, and it frees up the teacher's time. They don't have to worry about attendance anymore, because the computer just knows where the kids are. And it does a couple things. The teachers don't have to take attendance. They don't have to worry with security. You know, if a student is not supposed to go in the gym, then they get close to the door and it won't open for them. That kind of thing. They started it by putting the RFIDs on actual equipment, you know, so they could keep track of where the DVD players are and the computers and all that stuff. And then they were like, why don't we just do this to the kids? So they did that, and in fact, some of them even go so far as to give some biometrics about the students. So teachers can kind of look on the screen and they'll say, you know what, you're running 103, you need to go home. So, you know, because you're going to make me sick. So they'll send them home. They've done a few pilot schools in the U.S. and the data and the results were very successful, but they're kind of running into legal issues with privacy. And the school's answer to that is, look, all this information is out there. It's just how we use it. I mean, your grades, your attendance, your all that, whatever. You know, this is just a tool.